A little bit cheeky, a little bit charming, and a whole lot of fun. Storybox Live. A whole lot of fun. Storybox Live. A whole lot of fun.
G'day, my name's Kevin Rudd, and I'm pleased today to be supporting this important book called Sorry Day by Coral Vass and Dub Leffler and read by Trevor Jamieson. It's so important the next generation of Australians understand the significance of Sorry Day and the entire national journey towards reconciliation.
G'day, my name is Trevor Jamieson and I'm from Western Australia. I grew up in Esperance, part Pitjantjatjara on my father's side, all the way through the Nullarbor Desert, the southwest, basically my mother's side, who is Noongar, but also related to all the Marbus and the Mirning and the Ngajus, everybody through the country. But I'm here, especially today, to actually talk about this beautiful book I'm about to read, called Sorry Day. Oh, look, what this story means to me is because my mother was that generation of, this stolen generation, basically. And given context, not only just myself sitting here, but here in Melbourne, and under this Moreton Bay fig tree, has a lot of importance and history for the fact that great Sir Douglas Nichols he used to preach here back in the 30s, 40s to the 60s, back in those days. Obviously, this was a place where Aboriginal people used to gather during when the Second World War was on and afterwards. And I feel quite honoured, and I just want to say I want to acknowledge all the people here, past, future and present at the moment, acknowledge that I'm here on the land here in Melbourne. That is quite important to me. But with further ado, I'd like to actually read you this story, and it's called Sorry Day. There was a hum of excitement. Flares flickered in the breeze as Maggie's heart danced with delight. "This is a very special day," her mother said. Long ago, and not so long ago, the women sat around the hissing fire. The smell of breakfast flooded the camp as flies circled above. Running in the morning sun, the children kicked up dust. Maggie twirled around her mother's legs, in and out, playing hide and seek. The crowd hushed. Every eye was locked on the giant screen as a man began to speak. Maggie's mother leaned down. "Shh. Listen." Racing each other to the creek, the children giggled. "Coming, ready or not." Then a terrifying holler came from the camp. "Hush, children! They're coming! Hide! Hide!" Maggie buried herself deep into her mother's skirt. No one stirred. The children scattered, hiding in the thick mud. They lay silent, still. Thud. Maggie slipped, losing grip of her mother's hand. She found herself trapped in a sea of legs. A truck rumbled along the bank like thunder. Out stepped 4 heavy boots. Thud, 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 thud. White men. The children trembled. Maggie crawled frantically to find her mother. Hot tears ran down her cheeks. The children were found. Screams echoed across the land as they scrambled to escape, sliding in the mud with every step. A tender hand touched Maggie's shoulder. "Mummy," she gasped. "I thought you were gone." The land wailed as the children were herded one by one onto the back of the truck. Then it sped off, leaving behind only billowing dust. Long ago, and not so long ago, the children were taken away.
We say sorry.
Said the man. Maggie's mother wiped her tears.
To the mothers and the fathers, to the brothers and the sisters, we say sorry.
Maggie listened. Her mother kissed her softly. Sorry. The word echoed around. Every hand squeezed a little tighter.
As Prime Minister of Australia, I say sorry.
The crowd roared with applause, and in that moment, there was hope. It gives me a lot of hope knowing that, especially that apology by Kevin Rudd back in the day, to see the crowds of those that were taken away from their mums and dads, especially my mum. And I'm that generation that also, you know, takes the load and the carry, you know, I guess some of the sadness, but also some of the triumph, especially on Sorry Day. Seeing my mother cry, seeing all those people in Canberra hug each other, you know, and like everybody coming as one. I think that's where we all should be leaning towards as a nation that really, you know, take care of each other.
Not so many years ago, it was Australian government policy to remove Aboriginal kids from their mums and dads and take them away to be brought up in white institutions. Between 1910 and 1970, this happened to tens of thousands of Indigenous kids across Australia. Back in 1937, the Australian government brought in an even harsher policy. It said that any Aboriginal kid who was not, quote, full blood, but of mixed race, should then be assimilated into the rest of Australian white society. And that policy was used by governments since then, federal and state, to justify taking even more Aboriginal kids into custody and away from their mums and dads and away from their families. The real problem with these policies was that it ripped children away from those who love them most, their natural families. And so many of these stolen generations never saw their natural families again. Imagine if that happened to you as a little kid. I know if it happened to me, it would scar me for life. It took a long, long time for the Australian government to recognise that it had done something wrong. In fact, it was Prime Minister Paul Keating who in 1992 delivered the first speech ever which recognised that the Australian government had acted wrongly in his famous Redfern speech. Then, in 1995, the Attorney General of Australia, Michael Lavarch, decided to announce a royal commission into the stolen generations. It took 2 years for the Royal Commission to prepare a report called the Bringing Them Home Report. And when it was finally brought down in Parliament on the 26th of May, 1997, it's 600 pages of findings about the impact of this policy of stealing Aboriginal children was finally made transparent to the Australian public. It was a very good report, and you cannot read that report without tears coming to your eyes. 1 year after that, on the 26th of May 1998, we then proclaimed the first Australian National Sorry Day. And in the years that have followed, we've commemorated the cause of reconciliation and of the stolen generations for the whole country to participate in. It was, however, another decade after that, in 2008, when I, as Prime Minister, delivered the first official national apology to the stolen generations and to Aboriginal and Islander people more generally. Since then, we've implemented a policy of closing the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians in key areas like education and health and housing. We've had success in some areas, and of course, we've got a lot to do still in other areas. Now, if you want to learn more about all of this, there are plenty of resources for you to go to, and I'd suggest that you do so through the National Library and other such institutions in Australia, where you can find rich resources online telling you the individual stories of Aboriginal people who were stolen, but also of white people from the time as well, providing first-hand accounts of this very dark period in our history. Reconciliation is important for the future. I'd encourage each and every one of you in your own way to become missionaries for reconciliation in your own community. You can do that in so many practical ways, and I'll leave it to you and your local community to sort out which is best.